Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into something a little different this time. Your stack of excerpts all about personal cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's something that maybe doesn't sound like the most thrilling topic, but it's actually something that touches all of our lives more and more these days.
I think people hear cybersecurity and they picture like super hackers in dark rooms. And while those folks definitely exist, this is really about the everyday stuff, protecting your photos, your files, all the things that make up your digital life these days.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting about this topic is that it's not just about having fancy antivirus software. It's about understanding that oftentimes the weakest link in the chain is us.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. Where do we even begin with that?
Well, a good place to start, and something that your material highlights, is the idea of endpoints.
Endpoints. All right, break that
Yeah.
down for me. So in the simplest terms, an endpoint is any device that connects to a network. Could be your laptop, your phone, that tablet you haven't touched in months, even that old flash drive with your vacation photos on it. They're all potential entry points.
I'm actually embarrassed to admit how many old devices I've got tucked away in drawers.
And that's exactly why simply being aware of these endpoints is a huge first step.
Mm.
Because it's not just about the device itself, it's about what it represents, a potential gateway into your digital life.
Okay, so how do we even begin to wrangle all of these devices? I mean, between the computers, the phones, the smart TVs, even my refrigerator is online these days. It can feel pretty overwhelming.
It absolutely can. And you know what? Your source material actually offers a really simple but effective tip. Make a physical list.
Like with pen and paper.
Exactly. I know it might seem a little old school in our digital world, but there's something about the act of physically writing it down that makes it feel more manageable.
Okay, that makes sense. So I'm picturing my laptop, my phone. But what about things like, I don't know, smart speakers or those digital photo frames? Do those count?
Precisely. Those are often forgotten endpoints, and they're connected to your network, just like your laptop. By having a tangible list, you're not just mentally juggling everything, you can see it all laid out.
It's like creating a battle plan for your digital fortress.
Exactly.
All right, I am grabbing a pen and paper right now. This is already eye-opening.
So now that you're getting that list together, let's talk about what it actually takes to secure your digital fortress.
Yeah, it's a bit like realizing you've left the back door unlocked, right? Time to add some security measures.
Exactly. And one of the most important defenses, something that your source material really emphasizes, is the often overlooked router.
Okay, routers. I think most people know they're important for Wi-Fi, but I'll be the first to admit their inner workings are a bit of a mystery to me.
Yeah, think of your router as like the drawbridge and the moat for your digital castle.
Okay, I like that visual. So most of us have these moats already, but how do we make sure they're actually protecting us?
Well, the source material really digs into a few key things. First up, strong, unique passwords.
Makes sense, but it's not just about the Wi-Fi password, right?
You need a strong password to access the router's settings themselves.
Ah, so it's like having a strong lock on the gatehouse door itself, not just the outer walls.
Exactly. Then there's firmware. Think of this as the operating system of your router. You need to keep it updated, just like you would your computer or your phone.
Right, to patch those vulnerabilities.
Precisely.
Okay, firmware updates, check. Anything else we should be thinking about?
One more crucial thing, and it might sound counterintuitive, but disabling remote access.
Wait, explain that one to me. Why would I want to disable remote access?
It might sound convenient in theory, but it's like leaving a secret backdoor into your network wide open.
So someone could potentially control my router from afar. That's a little unnerving.
Exactly. And unless you have a very specific reason to access your router remotely, it's best to disable that feature altogether.
All right, consider it disabled. Okay, that already has me feeling a bit more secure. What else is on the RADA security checklist?
Well, remember how we talked about NAT earlier?
Nat, refresh my memory. That's a thing that,
Network address translation. Imagine you're hosting a party at your digital castle, but you don't want to give out your actual address to everyone for privacy reasons.
Right. So you give them all the address for the castle gate, and then the guards direct them from there.
That's a fantastic way to think about NAT. It masks the IP addresses of all your devices behind the router's single public IP address.
So it basically adds a layer of anonymity by making it harder for someone to single out a specific device on my network.
You got it. It's a clever way to make your network more secure.
All right, so we've got our endpoint list going. We've fortified the router. There's one more acronym from this material I wanted to make sure we unpack. And I'll be honest, it's one that always makes my eyes glaze over a little DHCP.
I get it. It sounds a bit intimidating, but it's actually a great example of how something that seems really complex can have a pretty straightforward purpose.
Okay, well, in that case, break it down for me. What is DHCP and why should I care about it as someone who's, not a cybersecurity expert?
Imagine DHCP like that hotel concierge handing out room keys to guests when they arrive. In this case, the guests are your devices and the keys are those IP addresses we were talking about earlier.
So it's all about assigning those digital room numbers automatically.
Exactly. DHCP makes sure each device gets a unique address so they can all connect to your network without any conflicts.
That definitely sounds like a good thing, especially for someone like me who would probably mess that up if I had to do it manually.
And that convenience is really the beauty of DHCP. Without it, you'd have to go in and manually assign a static IP address to every single device you own.
Okay, so then what's the catch? Because it seems like there's always a but when it comes to these things.
Well, you're right. Convenience can sometimes come with trade-offs, and the source material does point out that DHCP can potentially be exploited.
Exploited how? Give me a worst case scenario.
Okay, so remember our hotel analogy. Imagine someone nefarious shows up pretending to be a guest. With DHCP enabled, they might be able to snag an IP address on your network and gain access that way.
Okay, not good. So what's the solution? Just turn DHCP off completely.
Well, for some people, especially those who are comfortable with more advanced network configurations, disabling DHCP might be an option. But as your source material points out, it's not really the most practical approach for everyone.
That's a relief to hear because it honestly sounds like a headache waiting to happen. So, are there any other ways to mitigate the risks without going completely dark on DHCP?
Absolutely. One suggestion from your material is to change the default IP address range that your router uses for DHCP.
So, instead of that typical string of numbers, I could customize it to something else.
You got it. It's a relatively small tweak, but it adds an extra layer of obscurity. Kind of like changing the locks on your doors. It's not going to stop the most determined intruder, but it makes your house less appealing to casual thieves.
I like that analogy. It's about taking those small, manageable steps to improve your overall security. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners before we sign off?
You know, the thing about personal cybersecurity is that it's a journey, not a destination. Start by taking inventory of your devices, maybe even tackling one small thing at a time. Strengthen those router defenses, consider those DHCP tweaks, but most importantly, stay informed.
It really is like building a digital fortress brick by brick, isn't it?
Exactly. And like any good fortress, it needs ongoing maintenance. But with each step you take, you're making your digital life that much more secure.
I love it. Well said. Well, that's all the time we have for today. A huge thank you to you for walking us through all of this. And to all of you listening, stay safe out there.